And a very good morning to you on this Monday. It is President's Day. This is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel, and you can also listen to us on the PGA Tour Radio Network. I am Gary Williams. We are presented by Century Insurance, right by you. They invest in the right things in the game of golf. Their partnership with the United States Golf Association, with the First Tee, and of course sponsoring the first event of the calendar year on the PGA Tour. And of course, Golf Pride. Players at every level trust Golf Pride more than any grip globally. It's not even close. Peter Millar, every single thing I wear and have worn for 15 years. They have been mastering luxury and style for 20 years. And of course, Pinehurst, the cradle of American golf. I am supposed to play Pinehurst number 10 on Friday. It's supposed to be a high of 41 degrees. Oh, mercy. Well, it's also Michael Jordan's birthday. Before we get to the news of the day, and also Jaime Diaz, one of the great writers and historians, is going to be with me for the last half hour of the program in studio. Many things to get to with Jaime, but Michael Jordan is 62 years old today. He loves golf. And just a little story, back in 1991, they had won their first NBA title. Late June 1991, I'm a little lowly assistant at the Governor's Club in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, a new residential community that had opened the prior September. And the phone rings. It's about 7:15 in the morning, and I answer it. Golf shop, Gary speaking. Gary, this is Michael Jordan. What time can we play tomorrow? He just won his first NBA title, I don't know, 8-9 hours prior to that. He comes rolling in 2 days later. They're playing eightsomes, everybody with their own cart. And I'll never forget, he kept wanting to tee it up all the way back, tipped out at about 71 and change. And he goes back out there, and I have the gall, the snarkiness to say to him, "You going to break 80 this round?" And he looks at me and he says, "How much money do you have?" Now, if I had any guts, I would have said, "I will bet one of my checks to one of yours, you ain't breaking 80. But I turned tail and walked the other direction. Michael, have a great birthday. Maybe it's a Grove 23, who knows? He loves the game of golf. Somebody who's great at the game of golf is Ludvig Aberg, because yesterday, emphatically coming home, birdieing 4 of his last 6. He wins the Genesis Invitational. As we take a look at the leaderboard, and you look at this and you're going, it's a good mix of guys that are well established and other guys trying to break through in a big, big way. Oberg, he makes birdie on the last hole, 6 feet 9 inches. He beats Maverick McNeely, who had posted 64, and that 11 under par. Scotty Scheffler, kind of a, look, I'm not going to say it was his C game or his B game. He wasn't hitting on all cylinders, still finishing a tie for third with Patrick Rogers, who was in that last group. Trying to win for the first time. Patrick Cantley, good week for him, tied for 5th, along with Tommy Fleetwood and Tony Finau, and Denny McCarthy, who was with Rogers in that last group. Akshay Bhatia, another top 10 for him, and Justin Thomas. This is an encouraging building beginning for him on the West Coast. He, like so many of the top players, are going to take the next couple of weeks off as they go to Mexico this week. A lot of starts for a lot of guys who don't have many starts in 2025. Ludvig Aberg can play anywhere he wants, and he will play anywhere he wants for the foreseeable future because he's that good. For him to do what he did yesterday on a golf course where, if you just go back a couple of weeks, he was the 36-hole leader at the Farmers Insurance Open. And then he got something that you could just tell. Have you ever had one of those bugs that just takes you down? I mean, down to your studs. And he was bad the last 36 holes. Naturally speaking, he was sick as a dog. He then goes on to Pebble Beach and really can't fire there. And so he's only played a couple of times, and I kind of discount the other parts. He finished 5th at the Century Insurance, and by doing that, you're going, okay, he has announced that, look, how many times he's going to win this year remains to be seen. But at 25 years of age, as somebody who is experiencing major championship golf in 2024 for the first time, off the heels of being in a Ryder Cup in Rome in the fall of 2023, he has been thrust into the deep end of the pool. And you know what? He can swim just fine. And in the deep end of the pool, you find the likes of Rory and Scheffler and Schauffele when he's right, and a host of other players. But he has the makeup, he has the game, and he has the chops to be special. And Jaime Diaz, as I mentioned, is going to be with me for the last half hour of the show. And there are few people that I can lean on to give not only historical context of players who were young doing special things, but also he's got an eye. And through the years when I've asked him, is he a generational talent? And I know that that term gets tossed around a fair amount. He doesn't toss it around very much. I don't know if he thinks he is. My guess is he does, because I think he absolutely is. And if you look at the completeness of the way he did this, whether it is tee to green, whether it is ability to make putts when he needed to, and you consider on the 18th hole, Ludvig Aberg knew that he needed 4 to win and avoided the playoff with Maverick McNeely, who had already posted. And what did he do? At just under 190 ball speed, he splits the fairway, tops out about 318 yards, and then feathers a 7-wood to the back portion of the green. I know that's not where he wanted to leave it, and it's kind of a wonky putt because you got to go through contour that runs kind of across diagonally from that angle, the 18th green at the South Course at Torrey Pines. And once it got over that little ridge, it just kind of pushes it to the left. So he left himself outside of what he wanted, which was, 3.5, 4 feet. That would have been a great, great putt. His putt was fine. It was good weight, but 6 feet, 9 inches. And with Tiger Woods sitting in the booth, what did he do? Wrapped it right in to win Tiger's event. And so now he's had this interlude with Tiger. And I'm not saying this is about baton passing, but those things are not lost on me. The timeliness of people who you think are special, it's not accidental that they do special things at times where the interludes seem to match up. If you go back to 2000, and again, I'm not launching him to some category or some neighborhood with Tiger, but he is that special in my estimation. And if you go back and you consider, okay, Tiger in 2000, and he's finishing up on a certain day, and there's Jack, we think, playing maybe his last round at the Old Course when Tiger completed the career Grand Slam for the first of what would be 3 times. Interludes, moments that when you look back 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, you kind of go, why did all this stuff happen? Here's one other thing that is converging. And again, I know it's early, but we have been talking about this since it started, literally at the beginning of the year, more so on the DP World Tour, because it was Tyrrell Hatton who laid down the first marker for a European player to win on a big tour in 2025. Top-loaded field, good field. In Dubai, he wins that event. And then a couple weeks later, Sepp Straka wins the American Express. And then Rory wins at Pebble Beach. Thomas Dietrich wins last week. And now here comes Ludvig Aberg. And then you can add Adrian Meronk, and you can also add the other top 5s and top 10s from a myriad of European players. Luke Donald is not bringing the Washington Generals to Bethpage. He's bringing dudes, man. Dudes that can go. And this is not 1999 where he's burying 4 guys that you're going, okay, I forgot Andrew Coulthard was on this team. And Jarmo Sandelin, remember that? And even Jean Van de Velde, who was put in storage until Sunday singles. There'll be none of that at Bethpage. He's got dudes, and they ain't scared. And I know it's a long way off. And one other thing about what's happened early on the PGA Tour, look at the nations represented. 7 events, 7 countries. The United States represented by 1 player to win so far this year. This is the best tour in the world, the PGA Tour. There is no mistake about that, even though there was somebody who in Adelaide, Australia, suggested otherwise. We'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. But starting with Hideki Matsuyama at the Century, and then Nick Taylor, and on and on and on. A lot of Euros and other nations, 7 in total. It's global depth. It's global representation. It is the elite of the elite. They are coming from all corners, and they ain't scared. So here we go on to Mexico, and a lot of the top players not playing this week, so an opportunity for somebody maybe to win for the first time and add their name to a list which is eclectic, diverse, and I think telling. All right, we're going to take our first break. What did I see over the last week in golf? We get to that coming up, and then Jaime Diaz We're going to get to as much as we can with him because there's plenty to get to. It's a President's Day. If this is a holiday for you, well played. We're back on 5 Clubs on Golf Channel, and you can listen to us on the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM. Back after this. Back in on a Monday, this is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel. You can also listen if you're getting in the car on the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM. Brought to you by Century Insurance, right by you. What did I see? We do this every Monday. Well, it was not so much where I'm going to start with what I saw, it's what I heard. I didn't watch much. I had my mom's 85th birthday celebration over the weekend in Chapel Hill at a great place, Old Chatham Golf Club. Thank you to John Marino and their great staff. But it was something I heard from the new CEO of LIV Golf. And look, he's the front man now. It was Greg Norman. Greg Norman was thrust into a role that I think he embraced, being the disruptor. I don't think that that's Scott O'Neill's job to be a disruptor. He's in a position now, and look, we are hurtling very, very swiftly, as evidenced by the words of Tiger. Tiger is not accidental with anything that he says, and he's the one who said yesterday that this is going to be resolved very quickly. I said it over a week ago. I have a feeling that some big declaration is going to be shared with everybody, Players Week. I think they'll co-opt the stage with LIV Golf. I don't know what the particulars are going to be, but I think that that's when it's going to go down, so to speak. But Scott O'Neill, who has been in sports marketing. He's not a former player. This is a guy who's been in sports marketing and sports administration for his entire career. And he knows that words matter. And it's not so much that it's going to ruffle the feathers of the PGA Tour. It's the guys like myself and other people who cover the sport are going to go, wait, hold on a second. What did you just say? And this was not, some quote that you're going, well, maybe he was misquoted. No, he was on the broadcast with David Feherty and Jerry Foltz, the rest of the broadcast team, and here is what he had to say about LIV Golf. And I get it. You're at Adelaide. You got a great crowd. People are lathered up, and maybe you got wrapped up in the moment. And he said, quote, "You don't have to look too far past our leaderboard to know that outside the majors, if you want to see the best players in the world, there's only one place to see it, and it's at LIV." There's a great line from a movie As Good as It Gets from Jack Nicholson. "Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here." Scott, come on, man. One word, one phrase, saying it's among the places you can see the best players in the world. Okay, that's not, I think, dishonest, wholly. It's not. And whether you're looking at data golf, I'm not looking at world rankings. Data golf does a great job of looking at results and kind of going through the analytics. I'm not going to get in the weeds on this. The point is that's not true. And I don't know the point of saying that other than for people like me to react to it. And look, I think people know this. I'm not a hit and run artist. I'm not looking to T-bone somebody based on the result or based on a quote or a phrase or a moment. What's the point? That's easy. That's lazy. But to say that, come on, man, that's just silly. And like I said again, it was a moment, if you've not seen the movie As Good as It Gets, Nicholson's had some of the great roles ever. And he was an awful human being in this film. And the housekeeper for the guy comes over to his house and says, "Will you walk the dog?" Whatever. And then he just goes into this tirade. And then the last line is, "Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here." That line from the new CEO of LIV is just that. Crazy. All right, a couple other things that I saw over the weekend or the past week in golf. If you noticed, Rory McIlroy wore joggers on Saturday and on Sunday, and I actually think he pulled it off. I will tell you that I wear a pant, it's called the Razor Pant from Peter Millar. It's a very tapered look, kind of really great. It's not a jogger. Look, I'm a little bit more advanced in age than Rory is. I thought he pulled it off. They weren't too short. They weren't Sam Ryder joggers. They weren't Eric Von Rooyen joggers. But I thought it was a good look, and I would imagine it will not be the last time that he does that. One other thing that I wanted to mention, and I've got this, and it was more about something that was said than something that I saw, because it was such an excellent thought from a guy who was trying to win for the first time, who was so good in college and was so good throughout his amateur days. He got to world number one in the world amateur rankings, was Patrick Rodgers. Patrick Rodgers, after his third round, before getting ready to go out and try to win, not only a signature series event, just win period for the first time on the PGA Tour, had this to say about his state of mind and what he wanted to do on Sunday. And he said, quote, "Instead of playing with a lot of expectation, I need to play to achieve." That's awesome. Think about that. And I will tell you, just think about this for a moment. Expectations are just future resentments, aren't they? If you expect something of somebody and they let you down, you then resent that person. Or if you expect something of a movie and you go and you pay $12 for it, get the popcorn, the milk duds, and all of a sudden you're 30 bucks in and the movie sucks, and you're going, now I'm resenting the movie because the expectations were too high. For him to say, instead of playing with a lot of expectation, I need to play to achieve, hey man, those are little nuggets that you think about where these guys need to be and women need to be to go out in these cauldron, these blenders that are what our final rounds of elite professional golf are. It's a think tank where the tank is trying to end you. It's trying to suffocate you and drown you in thought. For Patrick Rodgers, who's been close, he has 3 seconds, he has a handful of thirds. It didn't happen yesterday, but it wasn't because he imploded or failed. Just didn't happen. Somebody else shot 64, and the guy who won birdied 4 of the last 6. All right, those are some of the things that I saw, and more importantly, some of the things I heard and read over the past week in golf. And I continue. Speaking of things that you read and hear, I was lucky enough in my last couple of years doing Morning Drive to be partnered with Jaime Diaz. He was a gift to me. I think he's a gift to golf because he's one of the best writers the sport has ever known. And him sharing thought on really anything, I think educates and makes you feel like you've learned something. You're going to learn something over the next 40 minutes. He joins me in studio on this Monday. It is 5 Clubs. You can listen to us on the PGA Tour Radio Network, on Sirius XM, and of course right here on Golf Channel. We're back with Jaime right after this. Welcome back to 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. This segment is brought to you by Pinehurst, the cradle of American golf. Pinehurst number 10. I'm hoping to play it on Friday, voted the best new public golf course in America in 2024. And appropriately, somebody who lives in the shadows of this great American resort is Jaime Diaz, one of the great writers, historians the game has ever known, contributor to Golf Channel and Golf Digest. And I was lucky enough to partner with him on Morning Drive the last couple of years of Morning Drive. And here he is in studio. Good morning, my friend.
Good morning, Gary. Great to be here.
It's good to have you here. Thank you. There's a lot for us to get to. And like I said, the joy of doing all of the shows that I did with you is that when the show was over, the conversations didn't end because there's so many things I love talking to you about. Let's start with something that happened this weekend. A lot of people were going, wait a second, that can't be an accurate stat. Now, Justin Ray is never wrong. He is mining nuggets about things that are going on presently and historically all the time, and you should follow him at Justin Ray Golf on Twitter. He pointed out that never before had Scottie Scheffler and Rory McIlroy both been in the top 4 on a PGA Tour event ever. And you're going, how's that possible? Well, it is possible. That doesn't surprise you, does it?
Not really, because as much as we talk about rivalries in golf, they're quite rare as far as head-to-head. Showdowns are rare, and coming out in a way that actually determines the competition is even more rare. So you have Jack and Tom Watson at Turnberry in 1977, and maybe you have Hogan and Snead in '54 at the Masters. But rarely, Seve, not that many showdowns.
Right.
Norman and Faldo had a few. Faldo always seemed to come out ahead.
Phil and Tiger, a couple. Doral it felt like an inflection point.
Well, when they happen, they stay in your mind because they're so rare.
Exactly.
But it's not the rule at all. And I think that's sometimes a misperception about golf. There's an elite group that dominates, and they're always playing against each other. I think it was formed in the 60s when you saw Jack and Arnold and Gary Player at the Masters in particular, always coming down the stretch on Sunday. But it turned out to be an aberration. So I think the point is there's just so many good players, it's hard to separate. Now, Scotty's been incredible. How often he's been in the top 5 going into a Sunday.
He's lived there.
He's lived
for the
there
last couple of years.
You know, Rory had his incredible start, but over time has not really been that many, contention big moments. When he's been there, it's been a huge focus, but has he actually gotten there consistently? This is not a knock, just not as often. We got spoiled by Tiger. He was always there. But again, even if you're one of the best players in the world, it just doesn't happen very much.
Yeah, the Rory thing's interesting because people are aware that he's won 27 times, but he's never had a 5-win season on the PGA Tour. And look, those things are also rare, but he is among the best players we've seen in the last quarter century. He's got 4 major championships. So it gets to something else, and that is 27 wins is a lot. Yeah. And at a time where you're talking about global depth being, it's deeper, the pool's deeper than it's ever been. I have a feeling that these wins, any win is great, but he is fighting something that I don't think anybody else is fighting, that people have confined his resume to 4 weeks out of the year. Don't you think that's going on?
I do. It comes from the territory when you're judged to be super gifted and super talented. And in his case, had this incredible start of 4 majors right away. And now he's had this dearth, a long time, more than a decade. So you start to judge him according to those 4 as, where's he going to go in history? He's been sort of, labeled as a historical player. And I think he is, just because he won so young. But he hasn't, following Tiger, there was not really a Rory era. It was a short one. And people are still waiting for that to happen. And that's unfair. And I think what happens is when you're that good and you've won in majors, you start getting judged by your performance in majors. Because that is the moment when the pressure is highest and the historical significance is greatest. And if you happen to fail in those situations, which is nothing to be ashamed of, it happens to so many. Most players lose more than they win, even the greatest players in the big contention of majors. But Rory's have been conspicuous. And so because he's been so good and had that start, it's harsh, the way the standard they hold him to. And I think there's been a couple of precedents. I think, ironically, Sam Snead, to some extent, suffered from that. He won 7 majors, but he also won 82 times, and he was in the hunt all the time.
And specifically, the U.S. Open.
U.S. Open didn't win it, and Hogan would outplay him in those moments. What separates Tiger and Jack is they came through in the pressure moments so often that it made them special. And to this day, we mythologize Tiger correctly, because he just never blew a Sunday lead, except Whitey Yang, that was about it.
Yeah.
And Jack almost never as well. Rory's had a couple that have really hurt. I think of Greg Norman, obviously. Greg Norman won 2 majors. He won a lot of tournaments. He was number 1 in the world for the longest time other than Tiger Woods. And yet, we think of Tiger, we think of Greg as slightly fragile in the biggest moments. And Rory vulnerable in the biggest moments. Pinehurst kind of,
More so than I think. I thought the Open Championship in 22 was excruciating because he was the last one in, and Cam Smith's he's on a heater, and he did a historic thing by playing the way that he played. LACC, maybe a little bit more jarring, in particular the choices that he made on 14, the par 5. Didn't have a really good chance for birdie on 18. Last year, to me, was his closest episode that would remind people of the jarring nature of the way that Norman either gutted himself or was gutted. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the little putt on 16 will, stay in my mind a long time. It's going to be hard to close these things going forward with that baggage. I think Rory has confronted that in a good way and said, okay, it happened, but I'm getting to be a better player. And that's all I can do. And just try to satisfy my own potential and run my own race and not worry so much about the judgment. But for someone who's sensitive to his public image and the way he's perceived and loves to please his fans, that's extra pressure too. If you're just a, kind of a sociopath about it and, you lose, okay, big deal, give me the next one because I don't care what anybody thinks. But Rory does care what everybody thinks. And I think that makes it psychologically a more difficult thing for him. But, he is a guy who, when it comes right down to it, you don't feel the security of the closing power that you did with Tiger. And again, following Tiger added also a level of expectation on Rory that's difficult. And so like LACC, there was a certain passivity to the way he played in a way. And St. Andrews as well. Even though he played well, I mean, he hit 18 greens, I believe.
Yes.
But Cam Smith was brilliant. and was bold around the greens and with his wedges getting close, and Rory just seemed a little tentative. Now, some of that is because he has to improve his wedge game, and I think that's one of the things that he's learning is like, if I'm going to score, I gotta capitalize on these 340-yard drives down the middle, you know, and leave me a million wedges. I mean, DJ did that. Tiger made wedges a strength. So I think he's doing that, and it's not too late. But it's made his closing power. I think it's inhibited his closing power because he just doesn't get it close enough to make a lot of birdies on a Sunday when the pressure's highest and the pins are the most difficult.
He had an awful putting weekend. If you look at his stats outside of that, he actually scrambled fairly effectively, drove it great like he always does. And I think that Pebble had people feeling emboldened about him because there was, I thought there was a refinement to the way that he went around a place that doesn't allow you to hit driver with total liberty. He picked his spots. And it was great. And I'm not going to take a poor putting weekend and say, all right, we're back to square one. But I also think, and last thing before we go to a break, is this closing aspect, whether it be regular events and in particular majors, I think it's palpable. And I don't know, look, we can't examine the mind of somebody. We don't know. But I walked with him all 4 days at Pinehurst. And until he stood on that 14th tee, he had not hit one quick and left for 4 days. And then he did with a 2-shot lead. I don't know. I think people who cover the sport, I think people who want to drag him over the line, I think that it is something they can feel.
It's okay because it's the final, to me, it's the final step in being great. Can you do it at the end on Sunday? That's what separates everybody. Johnny Miller talked about it. Players resented it because it was like, oh, you're talking about choking. It's a reality. You know, you have to handle that psychology and that stress. And he's getting better at it. And I think the fact, you know, I remember last year, you know, after it was over, it was like, for some reason, the thing I thought about is don't let Rory get discouraged. Don't let Rory feel like, I hate this game. Keep loving the game and keep putting yourself in there. And you'll have the satisfaction of you know, giving it your all and not leaving anything on the field. And I think he's doing that now.
I agree. I agree. I think, you know, making recreational trips with friends to New Zealand to see some of the great golf courses of the world is a reflection of somebody who's trying to love the game in different ways, which I think in total adds to his total affection for what he does. All right, we continue with Jaime Diaz on this Monday. Much more to get to, including, are we close to resolution? And what does that even mean as it relates to the PGA Tour and LIV? We're back right here on 5 Clubs on Golf Channel and the PGA Tour Radio Network on Sirius XM right after this. Back in on a Monday. This is 5 Clubs on Golf Channel and on the PGA Tour Radio Network. Gary Williams alongside the great historian and writer Jaime Diaz. And this segment is brought to you by Golf Pride, because Golf Pride now has the Align Max grip available too. There you have it. You can get it. It's available now. I've got them. I know Jaime will have them soon enough. I swung by his hotel room this morning, and at 5:20 he said, hey man, bring that set of irons you were mentioning to me. Always looking to get just a little bit better. I mean, come on, right?
That's what it's about, being better.
You were a college golfer.
Yeah, and a poor one. But I love free stuff, Gary, so thank you.
Who doesn't? Free is me is your motto. Let me get your thoughts on something. You've been very pointed in you know, your feelings about LIV. You're not a fan, but let's get past that for just a second. Resolution, détente, an agreement, a partnership. Do you feel like we're close to all this?
All signals are, yes. And even Jay Monahan's, you know, tone of voice was very hopeful after he'd gone to see President Trump at the White House. And it led me to believe, for someone who had to be very reticent over these years because the DOJ has been listening to everything he says, there was a freedom to it that made me think, okay, the pressure's off. This thing's happening. Let's just be patient. But all the pieces are in place. Everything that was in the framework agreement, you know, whether it was PGA Tour Enterprises or the equity for the players, they've all happened. And he has a good relationship with Yasser, it appears. The PIF has invested the 1.5 billion rather, and that's under review now with the DOJ. That's all that's holding up them actually starting to negotiate. So I think 2026 looks like a year that they could have a new schedule and a new sort of landscape for golf, for pro golf.
I have and again, this is not based on conversations with anybody. I feel like, first of all, you've covered Tiger as closely as anybody since he became somebody, and that was well before he was a professional. He said something yesterday. He's never accidental with words.
Right.
And for him to say words like quickly and healing, and we need this, and the best players need to be together, I feel like we are accelerating to that place, and I think there could be some type of an announcement with maybe some detail at the players and to share stage, whether it's Scott O'Neill, the new CEO, whether it's Josh, or whatever. I think that's going to happen.
That makes sense, and I think both sides need a deal. I mean, the PGA Tour needs a deal because the longer this goes, the more it hurts, sort of the engagement and the emotional attachment to the game that the fans need to have for the sport to be successful. And the PIF needs it because they want a seat at the table. And right now, LIV is bleeding money. And it's just time that this happened finally. And so I think Tiger, again, very measured in his comments, and it does feel imminent in terms of that part of it. In other words, saying, okay, DOJ is giving you clearance. Now we can actually get down to business and reshape the game here in a way that's profitable and hopefully, something that everyone will still love to the same extent as they loved before LIV came along.
You said the tour needs it. What does the tour need from LIV?
Well, I think the mantra is the best players playing against each other as often as possible. Yeah. And there are some great players on LIV, there's no question. Whether it's Rahm or Bryson or Brooks, even DJ if he got re-engaged,
Well,
Cam Smith.
Neiman is a wonderful player.
He's a great
Cam
player.
Smith
all those guys are really good players.
Of course.
There's just no, just because they're at LIV, it doesn't diminish them in their abilities.
No.
But it does diminish their ability to show the world that they are the best. And so I think to some extent they must miss that. But the main thing is golf misses it, and golf is only good when it means something, and it only means something when the best players are, and that's why the majors have been elevated recently, and the PGA Tour always had that. Not every best player played every week, but they played often enough that was the stage. That's where you judged who was the best, and we're not totally missing it because Scotty is the best, but at the same time, he hasn't had the chance to test against all the best, and so that's what the PGA Tour needs. I don't think LIV was needed when it came on. It just brought in so much money that it became this incredible temptation. And I don't think it'll be missed if it's gone. Maybe it has a role going forward, and maybe that's something that's part of a negotiation to make the PIF feel like, okay, our thing still has some life. But as far as the necessity, I think all we need is one entity that houses everybody together. And if it's called the PGA Tour, all the better. I'm sure it will be. And that's what the PGA Tour needs.
This kind of gets back to us talking about Scotty and Rory being in the top 4 for the first time on a weekend on the PGA Tour. You get the best players together more often. Your odds increase that those types of things can happen, but there is no guarantee. But it also gets to something that people have been adamant that there needs to be some type of recalibration of the way this sport is presented to the general public. I think there's only so much you can do, and I'm not trying to hold on to Jim McKay and Dave Marr in the 80s. I'm not. As far as it solving things, it doesn't solve certain things that are challenges for any sporting enterprise. Do you think the televised product needs to be completely reimagined?
I think the televised product is discernibly better these last 5-10 years. Shot tracer to me has been transformative.
It's like the first down line. We can't live without it now.
I mean, it's so incredible to watch the ball curve and see the shots actually being hit. To me, that brings the art of the game in a vivid way to the viewer and to the person who plays golf and going, oh, look what that guy just did. Look what he had in front of him, and look what he did with that ball from that lie. You just know so much more. I don't know what much more you can do. To me, the game needs to be faster as far as the flow of it, not necessarily the time. Obviously, 5 hours is way too much, but I don't think it should be.
Pace yesterday was excellent.
Yeah, I don't think 3.5. As long as it moves, as long as it's not players standing there for a long time, talking to their caddy forever, flipping pages on the yardage book, all those things are unnecessary, I think. Now, perhaps if in an ideal world, if you had 2 hours to prepare for every shot, you would put yourself in a peak performance position. But no sport does that. You have to have a time limit. It's done the world of good for baseball. I think a shot clock could really help golf.
I don't think it would be too jarring.
I don't think it would be jarring, because then there's been a prototype for it in the
Yes,
European Tour, and nobody complained.
Yeah.
And I think there were only 2 violations, and nobody said it was unfair. 45 seconds was enough. As long as it's adjudicated in a way that's fair, based on sometimes circumstances do cause a player to take a longer time. As long as it's fair and people are moving and there's a flow to the pace. It's just like when we play golf. We're waiting on every par 3 and waiting all the time. The round may only take 10 minutes more, but it doesn't feel as satisfying. And when you're watching golf, the same thing. If everybody's moving along, and man, that was 4.5 hours, but it felt good because it was athletic, it was in motion, and you saw the grace of the players, and not a lot of standing and just sort of stalemated moments. And that's what I think would improve the product. But as far as how television covers it, you know television far better than I do, and you know how difficult the job of just presenting the game over that vast an acreage with that
like
little ball and that little target. It's the hardest thing going, with players all over the place. They're rarely in one place together. It's rare that there's, like we were talking, a showdown where it's just 2 guys. On Sunday, it's everybody. It's just 5 or 10 or 15 sometimes.
Right.
That's awfully difficult. So I think it's done very well. But I've always said, and you say it too, you either like golf or you don't. Right. And the more you know about golf, the more the televised product is satisfying. If you don't know anything about golf and you're watching all these guys standing around and going, what the heck is this? It's like, watching a bridge tournament or something. So it's like, I don't understand the rules. Like I remember covering water polo and going, what are all these whistles? I have no idea. But the water polo guy's going, what a game that was, So you got to understand it, and that takes a while. So to get instant golf fans to love golf is not easy, but I don't think you can just change the television product and win all these people over instantly.
I also think that, this is the human drama of athletic competition. It's a great line from
Yes.
Wide World of Sports. Who is in the middle of that drama matters. And I think that in the absence of certain guys who I'm not suggesting they have as much traction as the greatest player we've seen in our lifetimes, the 2 greatest players of our lifetimes. But again, more of that. You substitute somebody like Jordan Spieth, who's deliberating. You're not going, why doesn't he hit it? No, you're going, deliberate more. That byplay with Michael Greller, there's a value to that. I do want to get his thoughts as we continue here on Ludvig Aberg, because as somebody who has seen the best, the young guys who come up and trying to distinguish between really good and truly great, his thoughts on Ludvig Aberg as we continue this Monday edition of 5 Clubs. We're back right after this. Back in on 5 Clubs on this Monday. Gary Williams very pleased to be joined in studio by Jaime Diaz, contributor at Golf Channel and Golf Digest. This segment brought to you by Peter Millar. Luxury and style, refining it for the last 20 years. It's all I've worn for the last 15. Very proud to represent that great brand. All right, Jaime, Ludvig Aberg. Yeah. I love tennis. My favorite tennis player of all time was Mats Wilander from Sweden. I think of guys like Stefan Edberg. I think of Ingemar Stenmark, maybe the greatest technical skier that I've ever seen. There's a grace to these Swedes. He has a regal quality to him, and that's nice to walk around in a way that you go, boy, that's really something. There are other things. You think he's special, don't you?
Well, he's very well rounded, it appears. The way he knocked the last putt in yesterday with real grace, dispatch, seemed like it was, I won't say stressless, but he was in the right zone. He was in the right place. There was not a lot of fidgeting. He didn't stand over it. It wasn't a special putt. It was just another putt. And that's a great way, to approach golf, especially on a Sunday when you're trying to close a golf tournament. So that intangible is attractive. But his golf swing is, gosh, it's majestic. It's incredibly graceful. It's incredibly efficient. He plays with dispatch. He plays with real kind of athletic grace and fluidity. It's really nice. I was talking to David Ledbetter recently, who's seen every golf swing and worked with everybody and has studied the golf swing like no one else almost. And he asked me, I guess he's just curious what I thought as an average kind of viewer who sees a lot of things, who's got the best swing in your opinion? And I kind of thought I didn't have the best view of it all, except Aberg stood out. So I said Aberg, and he goes, "Oh yeah," he goes, "by far."
Wow.
It's special. I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
And David always loves to refine and make everything minutely better. And he didn't see much at all. And that's a great. Having said that, the golf swing is not everything.
Right.
It's not everything. It doesn't predict.
But it's the other things, Jaime, to me that why I think it's okay to feel comfortable being bullish on him, because you're right. Having a graceful golf swing. That's great. It's things that I think when you have enough time that you notice, whether it's managing energy, whether it's spatial awareness, whether it's the idea that these things that are as significant as anything, and I'm talking about being in a Ryder Cup for the first time, being in a major for the first time, and he was in the middle of it late on a Sunday at Augusta National last year, not overwhelmed. As a matter of fact, okay with it, managing energy and embracing what is the weightiness of the most important things in your pursuit, and liking it, to me, is why you separate yourself.
Liking it is really important.
Yeah.
You enjoy this part of it. Even talking to Johnny Miller over the years, as great as he was, and when he's at his best, one of the best in history, didn't truly enjoy pressure. And maybe he was just being honest, and maybe most guys.
That's why he was okay talking about joking.
Yeah,
he identified.
That was
it.
the part of his career that was slightly unfulfilled. He wished he'd been better at that. And when he was against Jack, he always felt, God, Jack seems so comfortable. He's enjoying this. It's such a separator. I think the other separator, and it's such an obvious one, short game and putting.
Yeah.
You talk about guys with wonderful golf swings. Adam Scott's a great example. So many people would just predict, well, that guy's going to beat everybody as soon as he gets it all together. And he did have a great career and he won a major, and I'm not knocking at him.
Sure.
But he never became a great putter. And you just can't out-putt. You can't out-hit people. You can't out-tee to green people and just win tournaments. I know that the new stats, have accurately, I'm sure, said that the most important thing is proximity to the hole on the approach, as far as separating the best from the rest. But the very, very best can putt and chip on Sunday, because very often the pressure gets to you a lot, and then can you save it when you don't have all your facilities as far as, feeling great and coordinated? It's a grind. Can you grind it out?
Yes.
And Aberg seems to be somebody who has a really good short game too.
Yes.
And I don't know his stats on his short game, but I like his fluid motion on it, and he looks very comfortable getting up and down when he's not hitting it well. So that's a good indicator too. That's last thing is Scotty is a great example of all that. Scotty's short game separates him from the other guys who have big games.
Yep. All right, we take our final break. We come back. A couple final thoughts, set you up for Tuesday right after this. All right, final minute here on this Monday. Rex and Ryan coming up next. Their show from 9 to 10 Eastern Time. Very quickly, Tiger doesn't play the Genesis. Do you think he plays somewhere before Augusta National in the Masters tournament?
I think he'll want to, and I think he's capable. From what I've seen, him walking recently, whether it was at the father-son or even a TGL, just walking around.
Sure.
He looks not in pain. And his golf swing, Randall did a great breakdown of him in TGL. The speed there is 176, ball speed. The move looked really good, like he's getting force off his right foot, which is the issue, obviously. So to me, I think he wants to play because I think he feels like I got more game than people know, and should play the players probably.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch. You're going to be a part of this program going forward. We're going to do some special shows around the majors as well. Great to have you here. Tomorrow on the program, Dan Hicks of NBC Sports will join us, and Wagyu filet, a little steak for breakfast. Johnson Wagner, Brendan DeYoung in studio. Have a great Monday. Rex and Ryan coming up next.